What does water use mean to you? What's important to you? What's not important? These are questions I think our community will be asking itself.
Water. We often take water for granted, but rarely do we stop to think about how we get our water. We are situated in the Animas watershed, where snowpack melts from our mountains and flows into our rivers. We get our water from the Florida River, which then joins the Animas. From there, it flows into the San Juan and then the Colorado. Colorado is one of the 7 states that are a part of the Colorado River Basin. Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico are considered the upper basin states near the river snowpack source. California, Arizona, and Nevada are considered the lower basin states that rely on water from dams.
A little bit about water rights in the West is that they are on a prior appropriation system, which means that the first person to divert water out of the river is the first person in the pecking order of who gets to use that water, and second and third and fourth. So most of the rights stem back to the 1830s, 1850s, as far as senior water rights go, as the first people out here to use them, and second and third and fourth are the ones that follow.
In 1922, the Colorado River Compact was created, which allocated states a certain amount of water. The issue is that when they were trying to figure out how much water should be allocated to each state, it was an especially wet year, which was not accurate for typical water levels. Now we are impacted by this. Because too much water is being used, there's not enough water to maintain the amounts promised.
California is allotted 4.4 million acre feet per year out of that river. Arizona, 2.8. There is not that quantity. And by the way, Nevada gets 300,000, right? This little tiny bit. That's the dispute. California, again, going back to water rights, they said, we use the water first, so we are first in line. That's the argument that they are making. Arizona's saying, we use it for municipal purposes and a bunch of other things, so we should get some consideration for that.
There isn't enough water, and if things don't change, we might reach dead pool, when the water can no longer flow through a dam because levels are too low. If we were to reach dead pool, the lower basin states would no longer be able to get their water supply. The problem is, how do we allocate water so that it can be maintained without disrupting people's use?
We need to think about where we really need to be. How much water do we use? How do we maintain a good quality of life while we change the way we use water?
To answer this question, we looked at the 4 main uses of water: agricultural, municipal, recreational, and environmental.
We began by looking at the largest user of water in the West by far, agriculture. Agriculture uses some 80% of the water in the West. Agriculture includes growing plants and raising animals. The most widely used method of agriculture is industrial agriculture. It's cheap, easy, and what's been used for the majority of the last few hundred years. It typically entails growing only 1 or 2 types of crops or 1 or 2 animal species. Industrial agriculture uses fertilizer, pesticides, and insecticides to deal with pests and increase crop yield, and does not prioritize the health of the ecosystem and soil.
First off, putting any sort of synthetic fertilizer creates huge algae blooms in water that kills off pretty much everything in there. And then, all the sediment that could be running off. If you're using any pesticides or fungicides or herbicides, all of that's running off into your water and killing everything downstream of you.
Unhealthy soil means that it will require more water because unnatural soil does not absorb and store as much water as healthy, natural soil.
So if you have a big rain event and you've got unhealthy land because it's not been managed properly, is that water will fall on the ground, but it won't infiltrate and it'll flow off, and so you'll get flooding. But then also, it's not infiltrating into the soil, and so it'll flood, flow off, cause all sorts of problems and erosion. And then if it doesn't rain for a month, you get a drought.
The other type of agriculture is fairly new and prioritizes working with nature rather than against it.
Hi, I'm Gunther Ott, part of the James Ranch and founder of the James Ranch Homestead School. third generation working in regenerative agriculture.
Regenerative agriculture does not use pesticides, unnatural fertilizers, or insecticides. A regenerative farm includes native plants and many different types of animals.
My favorite part of regenerative agriculture is the biodiversity on the ranch. Every time I walk down here, I'm seeing new things. You know, we always have new species showing up. Just right here in these spruce we're standing in, about 5 years ago, we have a population of cedar waxwing that started moving in here, and we'll have a little flock down here eating dragonflies all summer.
Because it works in harmony with nature, it creates healthy soil with lots of organic matter, fungal networks, and nutrients. This means that it is more water efficient. Natural soil absorbs and stores much more water than unnatural soil, which enables this water efficiency.
Our second biggest use of water is municipal water. Municipal water is the water that we use for everyday purposes. It's the water that flows through the faucets in our homes, that is used in our sinks, bathtubs, showers, washing machines, and toilets.
When people in our community say, we are a conserving community, we conserve water, they're right. But we have the other side of this coin too. Population growth in Durango has increased, right? So if I, for the last 5 years, have conserved, and I have driven my water use from 300 gallons a day to 200 gallons a day, right? What we have also done is added more people. And they're using that extra 100 gallons that I'm leaving on the table, right? So again, we have these interesting issues in the city where people are using less water, and that is verifiably true. But we still continue to use more water year after year. And it is because we continue to grow.
It's also used for aesthetic purposes, such as watering gardens, lawns, and creating ponds and fountains.
Unequivocally, the greatest user in most municipal experiences is irrigation. That is spilling fully treated potable water onto landscapes to keep them alive. In the city of Durango, we're arguing about, do we keep using water the way we're using it today? And do we continue to grow? Elsewhere in the Colorado River Basin, what are they talking about? They're talking about less. And particularly this year, they're talking about, there are cities in Utah who rely on this water that have decided not to give people new building permits. No more new houses, right? There are farmers all across Arizona who are not planting crops because there's just not enough, right? So there's really questions in Durango about what's our responsibility to be a good neighbor.
Another main user of water in the West is recreation. Rafting, fishing, paddleboarding, swimming, and boating all rely on keeping water in the river. Although the current system doesn't consider keeping water in the river a beneficial use, recreation is beneficial for our local economy and for locals who enjoy water sports.
A beneficial use is not leaving your water in the river for an ecological purpose is not considered a beneficial use. Generally, that means agriculture, drinking water, city sewage, but that those typically fall into the traditional mindset of beneficial use.
People come to the West to see new rivers. Tourism supports our local businesses and is driven by our scenic bodies of water.
It creates more business. I mean, so having like when the Salt River down in Arizona has run this year for a very long season. So that kind of kicks our business in. We kind of, Four Corners River Sports kind of services a pretty big geographic area. So we're seeing increased business from the Salt River. The fact that the Dolores is going to run for, a month or two. I mean, it's running right now and it'll continue into June. That'll increase our business. We saw it this weekend. We had our big kind of season kickoff, used gear swap and sale at the store. Tons of interest in that, tons of people coming out. So it just creates enthusiasm and interest in having high water.
Due to tourists coming to the area for recreational purposes, they open up a lot of opportunities for jobs and recreation. Recreation can bring people to the outdoors, and when people experience and enjoy it and have a chance to appreciate it, they'll be more inclined to value keeping water in the river.
You know, recreation on the water, on rivers, just makes people aware of it, makes people more conscious of it, more willing to kind of lend their voice to conservation efforts and so forth.
The fourth main use for water is ecological use. Water contains many important organisms that benefit the ecosystem. It is important to keep water in our rivers and lakes in order to protect these organisms.
You know, I mean, there's a reason your washing machine spins, you know, it's because it cleans the water. So, you know, having decent flows in the upper basin states, you know, creates clean water for us and for downstream users.
The ecosystem is like one big tower. If you remove one piece, the whole tower may fall. That is why it is important to protect our water and the ecosystems that rely on the water.
Water is a very important resource. Therefore, it must be legally regulated and managed. Our current system is functional, but there is a lot of room for improvement. Within prior appropriation, if you do not use your entire allotment of water and put it towards what is considered a beneficial use, you lose that water right.
So if you don't use your full water right that you have, then you will lose that water right.
If there is a water shortage and you are not the owner of an old water right, you might be left without water. This system is not the most effective way to distribute this incredibly valuable asset. We need to incentivize using less water, either through tax breaks or another government-sponsored program. Leaving your water right in the river is also not a beneficial use, which is one thing that needs to change in this system.
Keeping water in the river for recreation and scenic purposes should be considered a beneficial use.
Currently, industrial agriculture is the primary type of agriculture. This needs to change. Industrial agriculture is inefficient and wastes a lot of water. It damages the soil, making it harder for water to stay in the soil. The solution for this is regenerative agriculture.
I think the most important thing is that we have regenerative agriculture in as much of our watershed as possible, so our water is staying clean and infiltrating into the soil.
It is clear that as a society, we need to make a shift to regenerative agriculture. The question is, how do we incentivize the shift? The solution is to give people who practice regenerative agriculture tax breaks. This creates a beneficial reason for people to make a change to a more sustainable and healthier form of agriculture. We can also create programs for seed money to help fund the upfront costs of making the switch from industrial to regenerative agriculture.
There are many ways to help reduce our use of municipal waters. One idea is to restrict the use of sprinklers for watering lawns, or to ban them in some cases. Another solution that revolves around plants and lawns focuses on creating programs to help fund xeriscaping. Xeriscaping is a type of landscaping that uses native plants that require little to no irrigation for them to grow. The final solution that we came up with is to create infrastructure for gray water irrigation before it becomes a necessity.
So gray water is water particularly that has gone through maybe laundry cycles, can be water off of roofs sometimes, depending on what definition of gray water you are using. But I think it could be a solution for Durango. There are a lot of other municipalities who are exploring that option.
The idea is to use this dirty water to irrigate our plants and lawns, so the clean water can be used for drinking water and other municipal services.